What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here at GSD Mode Studios with another GSD Mode podcast interview. Every single week, I interview top real estate professionals and top entrepreneurs that are straight up dominating their space. These are people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, for their families, as well as have a big impact on others. And today, you guys, we've got another rock star guest on the show. Our guest today, you guys, Shaun Osher, who is responsible for more than $6 billion in gross volume sales, a top agent in New York City, and today is the owner of Core, which is the #1 boutique brokerage in New York City. And Shaun breaks down so many amazing pieces of knowledge and information and strategies and tactics that we can all learn from to grow our business. And one of the most important is just the way that he perceives real estate marketing, the level of attention to detail that they give every one of their properties, treating each property 100% uniquely, and creating effective marketing game plans to tell a story about that property, show that property off at the highest level, make sure that they are marketing to who that potential buyer is for that property, and so much more. So again, you are going to absolutely love all the information that Shaun shares with us in today's podcast. Now, before we jump in, real quick, if you are a real estate agent, team leader, and brokerage owner looking to take your business to the next level, make sure to check out my personal 12-month-long mentorship coaching program at masterybootcamp.com, where you can learn more about the program, see a ton of testimonials from those that have been through the program that are having massive success with what they learned during this experience, and you can learn more about the program to see if it's a fit for you. Also, if you are looking for the most effective as well as affordable website CRM provider platform that exists in the real estate industry, this is the system that I have that I personally utilize in my business that allows me to become one of the top teams here in the United States. Make sure to check out perfectstormnow.com. Again, that's www.perfectstormnow.com. All right, you guys, let's jump on into this amazing podcast interview. All right, Shaun, man, really stoked and honored and excited to have you here on the podcast, my friend.
Oh, good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being here. I mean, appreciate you being here, but especially during these times. I know we're kind of in the middle of the COVID quarantine and a lot going on, and I know that I'm sure you've got a lot going on with your business as always, and making the time to be here truly means a lot, man. And I know that man, you've done so much throughout your real estate career, and you continue to do more. And you guys are up to so many big things today. But I'm always intrigued in our guest journeys of what led them here in the first place. If we were winding the clocks, man, I mean, how'd you get involved in real estate, and what led you to real estate in the first place?
My journey to real estate was really a means to an end to support my habit of playing jazz music.
Yeah, love it.
I was trying to survive as a jazz musician and a bartender, kind of needed something to supplement my income, went into real estate brokerage, kind of became a rental agent, and very quickly became very successful at it. I could quit the bartending gig. I could selectively play and pick gigs when I wanted to, and that was 25 years ago, more or less, and the rest, as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, man. And look, 25 years in the industry, and to create the successes that you've created, I'm sure at some point you have this love and passion for jazz, but I'm sure at some point you had to have adopted a love and a passion for this industry. And I'm curious, at what point was this more than, just kind of a stepping stone to allow you to play jazz music, and that you were like, man, I really want to make something of this real estate career as well?
Well, what drew me to real estate and what I loved about the industry is that no day is ever the same. I'm more of a creative minded person. I could never fit into the category of being a person who could do a 9-to-5 job, and be in finance, or not that there's, no creativity in that, because I think there's creativity in almost every industry. But what I loved about real estate was my ability to create something every day. I'd start a day a certain way, and then you never knew how the day was going to end. There was always that opportunity and possibility to create something. And, no day ever looked the same. In a lot of ways, it's like improvising. So there's actually a lot of similarities between playing jazz music and running a business. You've got a set parameter of requirements and goals and focus, But like what happens in between there is up to you to be able to maneuver and improvise and kind of set your own path, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it, man. That's awesome. So then, if we run the clocks at 25 years ago when you first get into real estate, because, you're in real estate, but you're also, New York has got to be one of the most competitive real estate markets, not just in the country, but on the planet. And, there's a lot of realtors in a smaller area, and it's extremely competitive, man. And we know the statistics of the industry. 90% end up not making it in the first 3 years, and so I'm really curious, man. What did you do those first really critical few years to ensure that you didn't become a statistic and that led to the success that you've had?
I mean, I think a lot of different things. I think when I started, I was really ignorant, and I kind of, I was fearless. I think that's a very important component. I had a lot of confidence. I was fearless. Went in with, no blinders on and kind of, stars in my eyes and the idea that anything is possible. And I think that's an attitude that people need to embrace and have in their daily life. So I had that very early on, and I think that was driven mostly by my ignorance of not knowing how difficult it was or what the obstacles were going to be. Looking back, I think if I'd known all the obstacles, I don't know if I would have made the same choices. But, some basic fundamental lessons that I learned growing up. Have a solid work ethic. I've never been afraid of work. I've always been a sponge for information. Never had an attitude where you know everything. Understand what you don't know and then learn what you don't know and continue to grow. And then, I would say to like people I meet every day, the things that your parents taught you are good things generally. Be on time, don't be rude, dress well, educate yourself, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, treat those the way you want to be treated. Just like really basic fundamental human ethics and morals. And if those are instilled in you, especially in the real estate industry, and you have a very solid work ethic, there's no reason why you couldn't be successful. So, those were the principles that guided me and have guided me throughout my whole life, that were instilled inside of me at a very young age, both at home, at school, and my surroundings. And I think those are fundamental things that have kind of set me on my path to achieving some of the things that I've wanted to achieve, and will hopefully set me on my path forward with some of the things that I'm looking to achieve.
Yeah, love it, man. So, I'm curious because I know today you've got your brokerage with offices, all throughout New York, and you have a lot of agents. But just like, we all start off as individual agents and kind of starting off at zero. And I'm curious of what led to and how did the brokerage evolve? Was it one of these things where you created a lot of business and out of necessity you needed to start hiring teammates that eventually led to the brokerage, or kind of walk us through that journey?
Yeah, the growth was very organic. First and foremost, I kind of learned the industry from the lowest point. It's almost like the analogy where the CEO becomes the CEO only after many years, and you start in the mailroom, or you start as like getting everyone coffee. That's kind of where I started. I was a rental agent, worked for a very small firm, really hustled, learned the ins and outs of the business, created my own kind of business parameters of how to grow my business. And slowly, out of doing the things that I discussed a little bit earlier, being responsive, being polite to people, being trustworthy, my business started to grow. People started referring me business because they trusted me. And then as I needed to grow my business, I kind of added one and then two assistants. I became the number one broker downtown, one of the top brokers in New York City, and became very disenfranchised with the way brokerage business was being run. I felt that a lot of the creativity that drew me to the industry was kind of getting flushed out of the industry. It was becoming a lot more generic, corporate, systematic, things that I didn't love about it. So I had an idea to start my own company to create a platform for agents who are like-minded, who wanted to be creative, wanted to grow their business in a kind of a different way than what the norm was. So I started Core, and when I started Core, I had four people who said, okay, Shaun, whatever you do, I'm coming with you, let's go. And managed to find myself a partner, and really the company grew organically from 7 people initially, And as the business grew, we added people, we added functionality, resources, and it was a very organic growth, a very different concept than, someone who gets a check for $100 million that says, go build a company overnight. I think some of the best companies and the best brands and the people who I admire most, people like Phil Knight, if you look at how he created Nike as a company, that was very organic. The guy started the shoe store out of the back of his, the trunk of his car. And the business responded to the market, and where he saw opportunity and a need, he was able to grow it organically. And I think that's the most, effective way of growing a culture, a brand, and a business.
Yep. Yep. Love it, man. So you're in the business for about 10 years. And like you said, you saw a lot of things that weren't happening in the brokerage community that, and I think that's, as you mentioned, where the best companies are created, where you're essentially creating the place that you wished existed that doesn't exist, that environment. And so you start core, what was it, 2005?
Yeah, 2005.
And I'm curious, man, because 2000, that's right when I got into the business as well. And there's a couple of really good gnarly years there, followed by, some hardcore corrections. And, a lot of people weren't able to pivot through those corrections. And throughout your career, if we look at this, right, you've been through the dot-com bubble, 9/11, the Great Recession, and then now we'll have to see what happens with this whole COVID pandemic and the economic potential blowbacks of that down the road. But you're somebody that's been able to continue to reinvent yourself and create success in good times and in bad times. And, I'm really curious with this because a lot of agents are scared right now of, what potentially could become. And none of us know, I know it's just speculation at this point, but, what are some of the best practices that you've been able to do through all of this to keep reinventing yourself and keep pushing forward and keep innovating to continue the growth and the success that you have throughout your whole entire career?
Well, I've had throughout the course of my career, many people have come to me from other industries and said, oh, I'm looking at getting into real estate sales. I'm looking at starting my own company. What advice do you have for me? And the first thing I say to them is, if you can't get back on the horse after you get kicked off, then don't consider it. That is the number one thing. Because I remember, one of my first deals I did, I had a buyer, I found a deal, we negotiated, we sent out a contract. I was already counting my commission. The deal fell apart and I was devastated. And it wasn't through any fault of my own. I didn't screw up. There wasn't anything I could have done differently to save the deal. The deal just died. And that's the nature of the beast. That's life. There's good, there's bad. Not everything always goes up. Not everything, it doesn't always go down. And you will get kicked off the horse. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you're doing, what industry you're in, you're going to get kicked off the horse. Now, real estate, especially, you're going to get kicked off the horse a lot in the best of times. And so that mindset as a concept throughout your career is a very strong mindset to have, and to kind of expect that this is going to happen. It's just the nature of life. There are going to be ups, there are going to be downs. Even when the market is humming, we have kind of difficult moments because we don't get every deal. So I would think that mindset to have to reinvent, recreate, be scrappy, solve problems day by day is a part of the overall mindset of being successful, regardless of what's going on in the environment around us. So I think what we've done successfully is kind of not be shocked when this happens. Don't react emotionally. Don't take it personally. Kind of be as pragmatic as possible. Look at it as objectively as possible. Look at the problem in front of you and be creative in finding a solution, regardless of whether it's a pandemic, a recession, or just a Monday morning where your deal collapses. I think all of those things need to be a fundamental part of your mindset throughout running a successful business.
Do you believe that the mindset an entrepreneur really needs to have, as you're speaking about, is something that is like how we're just wired, or you got to be born with it, or can it be something that can be learned?
I think it's a combination. I think you have to be a little crazy to be an entrepreneur. You've got to have some sense of self-confidence and fearlessness. You cannot be afraid to fail. Failure is a part of every single person's life. I've never met a person who's not failed. And it's the way you respond to that failure that will define you and your business. There are definitely things, I mean, that was a part of my DNA of who I am. When I was 21 years old, I got on an airplane with my saxophone and a couple of $100 to go to a country I'd never been to, and with stars in my eyes. That takes a certain mindset to start off with. But beyond that, I'm definitely changed since I was that 21-year-old kid. I've learned a lot, and I've grown. I've learned from lessons. I've learned lessons from mistakes I've made. And so I think it's a combination of both. I think you need to absorb, adjust. I used to get very upset personally and take it personally when something didn't go my way. That I'd made a mistake, or I had control, or someone had something personally against me. Something I've learned is that that's life. You win some, you lose some. And so I think it's a combination of learning how to adapt, learning how to be resilient, maintain your confidence and your belief. I think an entrepreneur has to have a very strong confidence in their vision of what they're building and understand why they're doing it. And that will be your guiding light.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see all those books behind you, right? I mean, how much of being able to set those expectations and so forth comes from, you mentioned Phil Knight, when you read the book Shoe Dog, which is such a brilliant book, man, the 20 years of really struggle before they went public. And, so in a way we can get those experiences by reading through others and have that preparation for, it's so inspirational when you read guys like what Elon Musk and Phil Knight went through to create what they've created. And, I mean, do you attribute a lot of that from studying other people that have created greatness, their journeys to be able?
Oh yeah, I mean, what's great about technology now is that yes, we've got books. This is like maybe 1/10 of the books that I have, and I try and read a book a week if possible, but to constantly be a sponge for information. And through technology now, like this podcast, I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from you today. Even though you're asking me the questions, I'm going to learn a lot about the way you think by the questions you ask me. I love reading biographies. I love reading about history. I love reading, business books by other entrepreneurs who've been incredibly successful. I love speaking to people. I love reading blogs. I'm a huge Seth Godin fan. The guy's an incredible marketer. He's a genius. So the things that resonate with me and my business, I'm attracted to. I find them either online, through audiobooks, through books that I read, through podcasts. I just finished reading Tim Ferriss's book, the Tools of Titans, where that incredible book, like that's the cliff notes of there's a wealth of information there that could last you a lifetime. So there is so much out there to learn from. There's just unfortunately there's not enough time, but whenever I have time, I'm always trying to learn from other people and kind of mold that into the way I think and respond to circumstances.
So I'm curious, because when you're a hardcore student, and as you just mentioned, we can't read all the books, we can't watch all the documentaries, we can't. So you got to then pick and choose to hopefully ensure that you're reading the right ones that you can read in this lifetime. And I'm curious if you have like a self-development kind of a process that you follow to be able to identify, what you're going to read to bring in the biggest impact where it doesn't just become a thing of entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, I found that actually, in the beginning, there was a lot of trial and error. Like I'd start a book and it would be terrible, but I'd have a problem putting it down and not finishing it. I've kind of changed that now, but I read so many great books. There are so many great books to read. My number one inspiration for book recommendations was Bill Gates. I mean, that guy's never recommended a book to me that I didn't think was an incredible book. So, I know that his reading and what he values is aligned with me. My wife is probably the most well-read person I've ever met. She's read every single book behind me, and she kind of knows what I'm interested in. So she will say to me, you should read this book, you'll love it. And I'll grab a book and she'll say, that's probably not a book you're going to love. With, usually with the fiction books. But, finding great people who you admire and respect, like I discovered Ray Dalio. I don't know if you know who Ray Dalio is. I discovered him through a book that I read. I had never heard of the guy, and someone recommended his book, someone who I respected. And when I read his book, Principles, I was like, wow, this is unbelievable, mind blown. Now I follow him. I listen to what he has to say. I take from it what, resonates with me. Tim Ferriss, another one, he, in his book, Tools of Titans, he kind of exposed me to a lot of people that I didn't know about. So I think that's the best way, to kind of discover avenues of learning that resonate with you. And I'm continually discovering new people that I've never heard about that I'm learning from.
Yep. Love it. So going back to the brokerage, when you started Core in 2005, I know a lot of agents, and I get asked from a lot of individual agents or even team leaders that are thinking about starting their own brokerage. And, sometimes things can maybe seem more lucrative than they might be, and things can be more challenging than they appear to be, right? So what were some of those, initial maybe obstacles that you had to overcome that kind of took you by surprise starting the brokerage? Because I know that there's so much going into that people have no idea, even that are, involved in the industry.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the mindset of a real estate agent is that you're running really your own business, right? You're an independent contractor. No one tells you that you have to be in the office at 9 a.m. No one tells you what you need to do that day. No one is giving you a task that you have to complete. You've got to be self-motivated and self-driven to build your own business. So that needs to be a fundamental essence of who you are, period, to start off with. The jump from being a real estate agent to running a company is huge, right? And someone who I respect came up to me the one day and he said to me, successful guy, runs his own business. He said, Shaun, you're thinking like a real estate agent. You need to start thinking like a CEO. And that's a very different mindset. And until you've sat in the seat, you really can't comprehend what it takes and understand the difficulties. But you're running a much larger operation. You're dealing with employees. You're dealing with human resources. You're dealing with finances. You're dealing with leases. It's exposing you to a much broader base of business concepts and day-to-day circumstances. So in that way, it's very different. And it's but the mindset is very similar. Your learning is very different, and what your daily skill set is very different. But also the real estate industry, when I came into the business nearly 30 years ago now, there were 3,500 licensed agents in New York City. Now there are over 20,000. So, the business has changed. The margins in real estate brokerage have changed. There's almost no margin in the business now. Back, 25, 30 years ago, real estate agents were not the stars of the show. The real estate was the star of the show. Now we're in the age of the celebrity broker. And I have to take some responsibility there. We were in the first reality TV show on HGTV selling New York. But something that was really important to me about that show was all about the real estate. It wasn't about the drama and personality of the real estate agent. And I think that's been a huge mind shift in the responsibility of the real estate agent. My agents are very successful and we build their business, but we build their business successfully because the focus is on the client and the real estate. The focus is not on the real estate agent. We're in a service business. So we are there to serve our clients. We're there to advise them, and we're there to represent them, and we're there to cater to their needs. A lot of the real estate agents today don't see it that way. They see it as if, it's all about them. They're the star. And I think that's a mindset that'll hurt the industry. I think it has hurt the industry. And I think it will hurt people's business in the long run.
Yep. Love it. Couldn't agree more, man. And then when, you talked about before starting Core, what led you to start Core, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to take what you said previously out of context, but sounded like a lot of what you were getting tired of seeing in the industry was almost like real estate agents just becoming a commodity, like just doing the same things, not thinking outside the box, not going above and beyond for their clients, not offering the services that they wanted to offer. And, what were some of the things that you initially started to do to differentiate yourself? And also, what are the things that you guys are doing now today? Because I think a lot of agents, they want to do more. They want to deliver more service for their clients. They want to do more things to get their clients' homes sold quicker, better, faster, for a higher dollar amount. But the reality is there's not a lot of training on that in the industry. It's kind of crazy. I was just sitting there with my team leader the other day, and it was like every single training is, how do I generate more leads? Very rarely is it, how do we stage a home better? How do we go out there and bring more value to our client? We've become an industry that is almost non-existent training out there.
Right, 100%. So for me, what I love about the industry, and I spoke about this a little bit earlier on, is that it's a customized approach. No day is ever the same. I believe that no piece of real estate is ever the same, and no client is the same. And they need kind of a customized approach. That's what we do. That's our added value. We can look at what they're looking for, and we can advise them. So one of the first things I did at Core that was an industry first was we started taking professional photography. Back in the day, believe it or not, most real estate agents would go to listings when I was at my previous company, and we could take photos on a disposable camera, and ultimately then a BlackBerry or some kind of photographic device, and then upload them to whatever listing system or run an ad. It was very rare that we had a professional photographer take photographs of property. And when I started Core, I said, all right, we're going to look at this company as if we're a marketing company. We happen to sell real estate, and we need to know what we're talking about. We need to be experts in real estate, but whether we're selling widgets or shoes, we need to do marketing at a very high level. We get paid an incredible amount of money to market property and to represent clients. And I felt that the industry and the bar of the industry was incredibly low. We had an in-house copywriter. I mean, I can't tell you, I'm sure you see it all the time. There are accounts on Instagram and blogs about how bad real estate marketing is. Our first differentiator as a company was, we got known as like the best marketing company. We had the best photography, we had the best copywriting, we did the best brochures. We had a consistency in the quality of what we delivered for our clients. And so I think that was a game changer. We opened up the very first retail sales office experience in New York City. So it was a gallery. When you walked in off the street, you could sit with one of my agents. We would show you the gallery of, we could do a presentation for you. There was a gallery of our properties. It was a beautiful experience, very high touch. And, those are the difficult things that not everyone can do. And, consistency is key to success. If you're going to do something well, make sure you do it well all the time, because one bad idea or one bad thing can ruin a brand and do a lot more damage than 100 good things in a row. So, I think that's what we did. That was our mantra as a company. We had consistency. We did everything we could well. I built a company not to be all things to everyone, because when you do that, I think it's incredibly difficult to be consistent, right? And be great at everything. You look at all of the great companies, Nike, what did they do initially? Shoes. They built, he wanted to design the best running shoe, period. That was his driving force. We wanted to create the best marketing firm for luxury real estate. We didn't do corporate housing. We weren't in every market. We didn't do both rentals, sales, and everything. We were very targeted in what our approach was and what our business was. And that kind of has stood us in a good way. We're also a boutique company. I think that just logistically, the larger your company grows, the more difficult it is to keep consistency in what you're doing. So, consistency has been key. I like to say there's not a piece of marketing material that will come out of Core that is not as beautiful as it can be. There's nothing that I'm not personally proud of that comes out of us from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, because I've read that you guys are not just a boutique, but the number one boutique real estate firm in New York City. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And then, like every year we kind of win best video concept in the United States. So we like to, embrace technology and use it with that same vision of servicing our clients. So, we were, I think, the first companies to start really using video in a productive way. Drone photography in the city, renderings, virtual tours. It's funny, we sold a project in 2007, and we did the very first CGI of a penthouse, I think, that was ever produced. And I look at it today, and it's still a beautiful piece of work. Something I'm still very proud of, even though the technology for CGI has advanced incredibly. We've been at the forefront of it, but it's also had to look good. I remember when virtual tours and iPix tours were a thing, and they were very disorienting. They didn't look good. The quality wasn't great. So we decided as a company not to embrace and use them because, if it's not as good as it can be, we don't want to use it. We want to do the very best, not for everything for everyone, but just knowing that we're going to be doing the very best that we can do for the select things that we do. And I think that's an important thing for a real estate agent to understand. You're not there to be all things to everyone. If you can create a niche for yourself and become an expert at what you do and do it better than anyone else, that will lead you to be incredibly successful. So, if you work in a market, let's say in Nashville, and you become the number one single family home seller in a certain segment, certain price point, certain neighborhood, there's enough business there for you to build a brand and make a lot of money out of. If you're in Miami and you're a broker, you may be only selling penthouses. That may be your brand. You'll get known as the penthouse broker. You'll educate yourself, you'll market to that. And it's very important for us as real estate agents to understand what our niche is and the business that we're going after. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't consider. They kind of panic and they want to do everything and they want to throw as much against the wall and wait for something to stick.
Yep. The riches are in the niches, right? And you look at Southwest Airlines, right? Just an example, the most profitable airline out there, the only one that didn't take a bailout in the market crash 2008, 2009, and they stay their lane, right?
100%.
And it is funny. It's, I've expanded into businesses outside of real estate. And the first thing in every business that I've been involved in outside of real estate, the first thing that you do is identify and get crystal clear on who your ideal client is. And I have to say, in all the trainings and coaches I've had through real estate, it's never comes up in a conversation, which is, a little odd, right? But
I think there are a lot of real estate coaches out there who are charging, not adding value. They're charging clients and it's all the same thing. And that's what I love about a guy like Seth Godin. There's no bullshit. He tells you the way it is. I love David Goggins. I don't know if you follow him and know who he is. But that, you got to look in the mirror and, not BS. You got to walk the walk. And, I think I've actually sold homes. I've rented apartments. When I talk to my agents, I can talk to them about going on a pitch and losing the pitch and why we lost the pitch. I can talk to them about setting up 20 appointments for a client, back to back to back to back, spending a week working on that client. Monday morning, you find out that the client went to an open house and bought something with someone else. And I know what that heartbreak feels like. I know. So, being in the trenches and having that real-time experience is invaluable. And I think if you can align yourself and learn from people who have actually had the experience, those are the people I think you want to be listening to. I think there are a lot of people out there who are talking who haven't really walked the walk. So that's just my personal advice. I'll read, you mentioned Elon Musk. The guy's actually, maybe a little crazy. People think he's wacky. But, he's brilliant. He's actually built a business. He's managed to sell it. He's a dreamer. So, those are the people that I would be listening to for advice and insight. Ray Dalio built one of the most successful hedge funds in the United States. And he's got a very set business practice, and he's talking from experience. It's not hyperbole.
Yeah. Robert Kiyosaki, I just finished reading it. He's got one of his newest books called Fake. It's called Fake, and it's fake money, fake teachers, fake assets, I think. But it goes, multiple chapters just on fake teachers and talking about just what you're talking about. right? Real teachers being those that have created the success that we're looking to emulate, because unless you've experienced it and created it personally, you can't speak to those pains. And it's sad. You go into Barnes and Noble, see 90% of the business books on the shelves, they were written by people that were studying the businesses. So it's so one-sided,
Yeah.
versus like you're talking with Shoe Dog with Phil Knight, when he personally wrote that book, you're going to get a whole different perspective. And, unfortunately there's an abundance of fake teachers and not, near as many real teachers. And
Right. I mean, the first thing I did before I started Core, when I knew I wanted to start my own company, I cold called owners of other companies who had been successful. And I hadn't worked for any of these people. They maybe knew of me because I was a top agent, but they didn't have to spend any time with me. I called Barbara Corcoran. I didn't work for her, but I knew she was an incredibly successful entrepreneur who had started her own company. I called her. She picked up the phone herself. She spent 2 hours on the phone with me. I'll never forget that. And the advice she gave me was invaluable to me because she'd actually done it. She'd been in the trenches. I wasn't like I didn't pay some money for a course from someone who was telling me something that they thought I wanted to hear. And during the conversation, I said to her, you're being so kind with your time and you're giving me all your secrets. And she said, well, there are no secrets. And if you can go out and do it, God bless you and good luck. And I think, people are afraid to approach successful people. It's kind of like that fearlessness that we spoke about a little bit earlier. It took a bit for me to pick up the phone and cold call like a Barbara Corcoran, but what I got out of that was invaluable, and a great experience for me.
yeah, love it, man. So, I'm curious for those that are watching and listening, and we have, agents from all over that are listening to this. And a lot of them aren't going to be in a market like yours in New York with the luxury properties and the style properties that you have. But I know that we can I think all of us have a lot of room to step up our game on the personal property, marketing and like you mentioned, making it about the real estate, not about our own egos as real estate agents. And I've been as guilty on the ego front, I think, as anybody. So, it's an area that I think we can all improve on. And what would some advice that you have that maybe you walk with your agents through and that you would give us? And like I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and our average price point on my real estate team out here is $304,000, single family attached properties, right? But we still can go in there and treat each property uniquely and cater that marketing to that property. And can you walk us through different ways? Because a lot of us, like including myself, I'm not a creative like you. So sometimes I have a hard time of thinking, well, how do I tell a story about this property or do some of the things that you do? So what would some advice be and some best practices that you could give us to kind of level up in our own games at that?
Well, first, let me say, it's not really the price of the property that's going to define the brand. That certainly helps, and when you're selling $50 million homes, that says something about the product you're selling. But if you do it with the same attention to detail, for a $300,000 property, it's still a lot of money. Instead of selling, $1 million property, you're selling three or four $350,000 properties. It's the same amount of money. It's just a different volume business. And Phoenix is I believe, one of the strongest and most active markets in the United States. So you've got an incredible opportunity there. I think, we talked about consistency. So something that you can do is set up, a protocol of like analyzing, what you're doing. So essentially, if a seller is hiring you, you're being hired to present and make a first impression of that property in the best way possible, right? And you've got one time to make that first impression. So I think it's the little things that make a huge difference. I see mistakes all the time by real estate agents across the United States where they haven't taken into consideration some very basic fundamental things. If you're selling a home, what's the curb appeal? Your first impression is the curb. So sitting with a homeowner and consulting and advising them and being brutally honest with them, I think is key. If you're trying to sell a home for them, you're on the same team. So kind of, not telling them the truth doesn't help anyone. So if you get a listing and the home, the landscaping's not good, the lawn hasn't been cut, or the front door is broken, or there are things that are essentially going to hurt your ability to sell this home for the highest price. One thing that I would do is you do an analysis. You do like a punch list. You do a walkthrough. You don't need to be creative. Like, this is common sense. You don't need to like come up with a magic trick or some incredible marketing brilliance. You sit down and you say, here is the punch list, Mr. Homeowner. You need a landscaper to come in here and spend a couple of $1,000s, put some beautiful plants in the front, give it some color. That's your first impression. That's going to make a huge difference. Paint the front door, clean the windows, make sure the window treatments are open to a certain, point. Go through the home, make sure that if something's falling apart, it's fixed. Or if there's a mess in the kids' room, it's always clean. Just it's very basic stuff. And I think that a lot of real estate agents have a fear of confrontation when it comes to advising and consulting the seller. We're hired as the expert, and we're hired because they value our opinion and want our advice. So we should be giving it to them and not afraid that we're going to alienate the seller. We should be advising them about the best thing that should be done. So, just one idea is to like be totally honest with them. You do an analysis of the property, you sit down with them and you say, all right, this is how we're going to get this done. This is what's needed. I need your help. If you can't do certain things, I know a contractor who could do certain things, and you build your business that way.
Yeah. Love it. And then how important is it when you're marketing a home, because you guys have your copywriters in-house and so forth, to be able to identify and know, what type of buyer is most likely to buy that property. So then you can really showcase and show off what that person might be looking for with the story that you're telling through the copywriting, with the video, all of that. I mean, is that something that you guys, really spend time thinking about each property, or is it just more of how do we just showcase this to look at its best for?
Yeah, no, I think it's the most important thing is to understand who the buyer is, right? So if you're an expert, by being an expert, you need to know, I tell my agents this, you should know every sale that's happened in that market. You should know who every buyer was, what their, everything about them that you can, to understand, what they're looking for, what resonated with them, and why they bought that property. Is it because, it had a great front lawn for their kids? Is it because the house was in mint condition? Is it because the house needed some fixing up and these were people who had some spare money who wanted to put money in and add value to the property? I think understanding who the buyer is really important, and you can really target the way in which you speak to people and how you present the property in the best way. If that makes sense. I don't know if that answered the question, but
Yep.
definitely, if your clients are not on Instagram, then why are you on Instagram?
Right.
If your clients are opening up the weekly paper and if they want to read an opinion piece, maybe you want to become a writer for the local paper and give them a free opinion and add value. I think it's all about adding value, right? And if you can do that for your seller, you're going to be successful. And if you can understand who you're speaking to as the buyer, you're going to be much more effective with your marketing.
Yep. Love it, man. So then, I'm curious with, all the stuff that you guys are doing and the innovative stuff that you've done in the past and continue to do. We're 2020 here, lots of technology available to us, and the rapid speed of new technologies being released. I'm curious of what are some of the, your favorite pieces of, technology and or just tools that you're utilizing for your marketing. And then I'm also curious on what are some of the things that you're excited about, as we see the introduction to more AI and even some of these, 3D virtual tours and so forth coming down the road.
Well, I think, we're sitting in the midst of this pandemic. Everyone is quarantined at home. And I think the learning lesson from this through technology is that we're having a conversation now. And actually, this conversation I'm having with you is probably better now and more qualitative than it would have been when we weren't in a shutdown. We're doing a Zoom call. You're recording it. You're going to post it. People who are interested are going to see it. I think the way in which we communicate with homeowners and buyers is going to be a little bit different. Nothing is going to completely, replace that personal interaction. And certainly if you're a great real estate agent, you know what that experience is when you're in the home, how to say certain things, how to show off a room, how to plant seeds in the minds of a buyer, and how to, when you see their interest, how you can respond to it and close the deal. But I think what this technology, right now is doing is, you may have an opportunity where you do that first showing where they've walked the property, but a lot of buyers want to come back a second, third, fourth, fifth time. They want to bring their designer, they want to show their mother-in-law, they want to, I think this could replace that experience. It could be a much more efficient and effective method of educating a buyer who's already seen the property. But like I'm looking at your screen now, you've taken a lot of attention to detail. I can tell a lot about you by just looking at your picture right now. Your pictures on your wall are straight. You've got your branding. You're neat. You're organized. The way in which you're presenting yourself is very professional. And I think there is good and bad in everything, right? I could be speaking to someone right now. Their screen could be foggy, could be out of focus. Your room could be a mess. So I think technology is the tool, but the way we use it is going to kind of be the way that your brand is built. So, one of the things that I think that can come out of this is the use of live interaction over either video or some kind of communication, whether it's a FaceTime call, a Skype call, a Zoom call, Google Meets with clients. And I think we're going to start doing that a lot more frequently. And I think it'll be a very effective tool to use. And I love this. I love the ability to be able to connect to you through this means.
Yep. Love it. So then, I'm curious with, being in this business, in this industry for almost 3 decades. And again, I know that none of us have a crystal ball, but I'm curious, based on your experiences and seeing so many ups and downs of the market, just, what are some of the things that maybe you're doing to prepare for what's to come of this COVID-19, and just maybe what your thoughts are on it, because I'm sure you just, I'm getting hit up about a dozen times a day of, what people's opinions are. Is the market going to crash? Our sellers and buyers are asking these questions, and they have a lot of concerns. And, I'm curious, what your thoughts are and what you are maybe doing to prepare personally as well as your company for if this is to be a next shift.
Well, I think definitely urban markets are going to be hit hard, right? Cities like New York, LA, more metropolitan areas for the short term are definitely going to be hit hard. I think a lot of people will leave the cities and go to suburbs and want more space. But I think that's a short term. I think over the course of the next 2 years, I think it'll even out, and I think people will come back to cities because they always have historically. But I think pricing is going to go down in some markets and most markets, but I think pricing will come up in some other markets that will, pricing is all about supply and demand. If we look at the United States, there is a housing crisis in this country where there is not enough housing. We kind of saw that before this pandemic. So in markets like yours, the reason why you guys are selling so many homes is you've got so many people moving from other states. You've got a great quality of life. You've got a really good tax environment, and you get a lot for your money. So I see a market like Phoenix possibly going up in value and becoming more popular, and there'll be a need for more housing. So I think there's the opportunity, right? And the opportunity is in every market, because if you look at the role of a real estate agent, we're not there to determine and define the market. There are elements well beyond our control that determine those things. Mostly consumer confidence, right? Consumer confidence in local governments, in the job market, in your income, and just your general feeling about where you want to live and how you want to live your life. So from a real estate brokerage standpoint, we care about transactions. So in every city, I think people are going to be moving. People are going to be making changes. This is going to change the mindset in a lot of buyers and sellers' minds, and they're going to want to make some shift. We should be there to serve our clients in the best way possible to help navigate that move, right, and transact. So I think, right now, nationally, we're in a place where a lot of people are a little shell-shocked. They're uncertain, and they don't know where they're going and what they're doing. They're just deciding that and discovering that. So the market, I think, nationally is on pause. That's going to stop, and it's going to start moving. And, that's when real estate agents do really well and can be very successful in assisting these people with their move in the best way possible. I think from the consumer standpoint, buyers and homeowners are going to want a little bit of a different thing out of where they live. I think the home needs to evolve. It needs to evolve both from a technological standpoint, but also from a functionality standpoint. You know, you're sitting in what looks like a home office, which is awesome because you're working from home. But for all I know, maybe it's your kid's room or it's the annex to the kitchen, but you know, if you're going to be working from home, you're going to need a place where you can work and be productive. So I think a lot more people are going to need more things and different things out of their home. They might forego a formal dining room in a huge amount of space and want a meditation room, you know, which is a small 5 by 5 room. I know I would love one of those in my house and in an apartment. I think most people would. So I think the design of homes is going to change. It's going to adapt. And I think that's a huge opportunity for developers, for homeowners. And, you know, the real estate agent is the conduit to all of that happening. So I think there's going to be huge opportunity in our industry, not maybe in the short term, but after that. And I think that's where things are going.
Yep. Awesome, man. So then, you know, I'm curious with, you know, all the growth that you've had and continue to have with Core. And I know you spoke of this earlier of, you know, really staying in your lane and not being all things to all people. But as you guys continue to grow, I'm just curious of, you know, the vision of Core. Do you guys see Core expanding to other states, other markets, or maybe even, you know, doing marketing outside of just for the agents in your organization, but for other, you know, maybe organizations that, you know, fit that niche? I mean, where do you see Core in 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very hard to say where I see Core in 10 years because I don't have that big of a crystal ball. I know that what we've created is definitely translatable into other markets. I know that we're going to be working with developers to provide the insight that we've had in pre-development and marketing services for new homes. I think there's a lot that's translatable from what we've learned and been successful with in New York City in other markets. So I definitely see us doing that. From the brokerage side, you know, the brokerage business is not a business where the owner really, the margins are not good. So it's not a business which is lucrative for a number of reasons. I don't necessarily see that changing. So I'm not sure if, you know, what that does to the national market. It seems like the big players just want to get bigger and build, you know, scale. But I'm not sure how viable that business model is. I know that what we've built at Core and the way we look at the business is very translatable into almost every other market in the United States and globally. I think the world is becoming a lot more global. I think the expectations of buyers and sellers in every market are becoming more or less the same. You know, people want to know that they can call a real estate agent and they are speaking to someone who is going to be on time, respond to their questions, have a good knowledge base and be able to advise them accordingly, and present themselves and their property in the best way possible and in a way that they're going to be proud of being associated with that person. And I think those are just fundamental things that translate into every marketplace in the United States. So, you know, those are our mission and brand principles. And I think those are very translatable to every market.
Yep. Love it. So I know that you are also a fellow podcaster. I'm curious, man, like what led to you wanting to start this podcast, and love to hear more about the podcast itself.
Yeah, so the podcast is called On Site. It's basically, I wanted to, you know, I sit in a lot of meetings with developers and people who kind of change the skylines around the world. And I have a seat at the table because of my experience and because of what we're hired to do, to be associated with some incredibly smart and creative people. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if I could have an open conversation with some of these great minds who change the landscape of the cities in which we live, and kind of expose everyone else to the, you know, the things that I'm exposed to. And, you know, I thought just from my own selfish standpoint, it would be awesome to sit with these people for, you know, 30 minutes to an hour and have a conversation where I'm learning from them. And, if someone wants to dial in and listen, that's great. If no one does, I'm also fine with that. I did it as a way to kind of have a conversation and expose people, in Phoenix to a developer of the tallest high rise in the world, and kind of give them an insight into, what's going on, what they're thinking about, some of the innovations happening in the minds of people who are changing the way in which we live.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, I get asked all the time for people of, how do you monetize the podcast? How much money to make on the podcast? And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, if there was no money in it, which can be even hard to track that, right? And I don't have sponsors on the podcast. So really at the end of the day, I guess there's no money in it. But I'm like, man, the ability to pick brilliant minds like yours every single day, and the connections and the relationships, it's the one thing that we get that asked that question of, what would you do for no money that you'd continue doing, right? And for me, hands down, I mean, there's other things, but the podcast is one of those for sure. It's got to be one of the best things I've ever done. And I got to imagine it's an insane experience for you as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I think you're now becoming an ambassador for information. That's part of your brand. You're interested. It tells me a lot about you. This is the first time we've met, but I know that you're interested in sharing ideas. That says a lot. You're a platform for people to learn. You're asking smart questions, which tells me that you know a lot about the industry. And you're asking questions that are related to both my market and yours, and bigger concept. And I think you're a valuable resource to those people who are interested in learning about the industry and bettering themselves. And I think that becomes a part of your brand.
Yep, 100%.
It's an awesome thing.
Yep. And then I know that you also have a weekly newsletter.
I do, yes. So my weekly newsletter is called Padkos, Padkos, and you can subscribe to it on ShaunOsher.com. And it's something that I started at the beginning of the year. Padkos is an Afrikaans word, which means take your food for thought on the way. You pack a little bag and you've got your Padkos with you, which is an idea or food. So that's where it came from, South Africa. It's an Afrikaans South African word. But just once a week, I send out on a Friday my thoughts of the week, things that are related to the brokerage business, to the industry, to my market, to just my 2 cents on my opinion. And I was inspired by some other newsletters that I was getting that, again, it's like the books behind me, the things that resonate with me that I'm attracted to, I'll read. Those that I'm not interested in, I won't. I kind of thought of my newsletter as a cathartic mechanism for my own personal gratification. And I said, what, if people read it, awesome. If they enjoy it, that's great. If they don't, I'm not going to take it personally. It's actually been a huge success, which tells me that either people want to hear what I have to say or they've got nothing better to do with their time. So hopefully it's the former, not the latter. But yeah, it's been awesome. And the thing about it is I've been consistent. Every week I send it out on a Friday. People now look forward to it. And it's something, that works for me, may not work for everyone, but it's one of those things like a podcast, a newsletter, a marketing piece, you may want to do a data piece. You may want to do your own insights into a neighborhood. I think those are things that, are really important to building a brand. And again, I love it because it gives me the ability to be creative and just to share some experiences that I've gone through in New York City over the last 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome stuff. And those watching and listening, wherever you're at, we're going to have links where you can check out Shaun's podcast as well as jump on his free newsletter. And I highly, highly recommend that you do both. There's so much great information in those that we could all learn from and improve ourselves and the services that we bring to our clients and so forth. So I got 2 more questions for you. But before I do that, Shaun, where is, if anybody that's watching and listening, if they're in your area, if they're interested in learning more about Core and having that conversation with you, or maybe they have a referral for your market and so forth, where's the best place to learn more about Core and get in touch with you there?
You could go to our website, which is corenyc.com, CORENYC.com. You can look at our films, our videos, our properties, our agents, and my information's on the website. You can email me directly. I respond to every single email. I'm also on Instagram at Shaun Osher. I respond to every single message I get, and yeah, that's the best place. And I'll always have an opinion.
Love it. And again, those that are watching, listen, we'll have all Shaun's information before, social media handles, all that. So if you just scroll below, you'll see all of that. So just two last questions for you. The first question, I'm curious, you started this journey so then that it could fund and give you the lifestyle and also the money to continue, playing, following your jazz passion. And, I'm curious, man, is that something that you're still involved in today? And have you been able to, keep that journey going?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have. I'm continually playing the saxophone. I don't play professionally out much anymore, but I did during my, formative years. But if I ever get the opportunity to get on stage and play, I always take people up on it. I've had the fortunate, history of being able to play at some of the greatest jazz clubs in the world. I played with Elton John a couple of times. I've been exposed to a lot of great musicians, had some great experiences, and I continue to do it. Playing the saxophone is not a choice. It's kind of a necessity for me. It's my first love. And I continue to play. So that's really, it's a part of what makes me me. And I play for myself, and it's kind of like a self-meditative process for me. It keeps my soul alive.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love hearing that. So many entrepreneurs I talk to and I meet, because entrepreneurship can take so much out of us, energy and time. And I see so many people abandoning, their hobbies and their loves. And it's, so inspirational, hearing that you've been able to have a lot of success in both and not have to abandon, that love. So awesome stuff. All right. So last question for you. If with knowing everything that you know now today, if Shaun today could go back and have a conversation with Shaun 25 years ago when you first entered the industry and give yourself two pieces of advice, again, knowing everything that you know now today that you feel would have just had a big impact on fast forwarding this is, success trajectory that you're on, what would those two pieces of advice look like?
I would say, kind of I've already discussed them on this call. I would say number one is don't be afraid to fail, like embrace failure. Don't let it set you back. You're going to fail. I don't know anyone who has not failed. So when you fail, how you respond to that failure will define how you move forward. So expect the failure, recognize it, look at it pragmatically, make adjustments, and move forward as quickly as possible from that failure as you can. That's number one. And, I guess the second piece of advice, if I had to give a piece of advice, is just, don't let anyone tell you that, I know this sounds really cheesy, but it's true. I was a kid, I had no contacts, no money, came to a foreign country at the age of 21. And, it was kind of like blind ignorance maybe, or just, confidence, or, it was something. And I'm glad I got on that plane and came and landed. And yeah, it was difficult. There were moments of reckoning. It was not easy, but I don't know anyone's life who's like easy. So, you create your own path, have the confidence in your vision, and don't ever let anyone tell you that you cannot achieve it. Because the people that we've spoken about on this call, the Ray Dalios, the Elon Musks, the Phil Knights, the Seth Godins, there's people, the David Goggins. I mean, read that guy's story. So find inspiration in those people and their stories. And there are so many out there. And write your own story and create your own journey and believe in yourself, because there will be so many people who will look you and, and say, for one reason or another, you can't do this. You're not going to do this. This is going to be too hard for you. Don't buy into any of that BS. You can create whatever you set your mind to, and don't let anyone ever dissuade you from that.
Yeah, love it. Such powerful words. And those watching and listening, I know I end every podcast with this, but information without implementation is truly just the start of delusion. Information is no longer power. It's taking that information, taking action on it. That gives you the power to create the life that you know you want and deserve. And Shaun shared so many amazing pieces of advice and knowledge with you guys. So make sure that you take something that you learn, take immediate action on it. So again, you can create that life that you know you want and deserve. And Shaun, I know how busy you are, and I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy to be here, man. It's been a lot of fun and it's been a huge honor.
No, the honor was mine. Thank you very much. This was great, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me as well. We learned a lot. And again, thank you again, my friend. And those watching and listening, thank you as always for watching and all of your support. And we will see you next time. Peace.
Awesome. Thank you.